This is Pastor Abel Damina, one of the greatest men of God in Nigeria, and many people have been telling me to talk about him. As you know, he's a Christian pastor, but there's a problem. If you have been following Nigerian Christian atmosphere, the problem is that what he preaches, the way he's interpreting the classical stories in the Bible, is different from the way it has always been, that the normal narrative all the other Nigerian pastors have. So because of this, many pastors are having issues with him. Many of them don't even want to invite him to their church. But you know, when you finally listen to him, you see that what he's saying makes sense, makes common sense. I don't know if you get what I'm saying. The way he's interpreting it makes common sense. Even to an unbeliever, to an atheist will listen and say, oh, well, what you say makes sense, you know, nothing to criticize there. One of the reasons people turn to atheism is because when they ask critical questions that are common sense questions, the pastors cannot answer them. Most of these pastors, they are taking advantage of the fact that the church is structured in such a way that you can't stand up and ask a pastor a question. You can't raise your hand when pastor is saying rubbish and say what you say, this, that. So because of that, they get away with a lot of rubbish in terms of preaching impossible things or cock and bull stories. But then when the members go to the social media, they see other people like atheists, critical thinkers, free thinkers, non-believers pick up these stories and poke holes in them. At the end, they'll be like, nah, our pastor was actually lying. So they leave the church. So if you're wondering why some churches are becoming empty, that's the reason. So, but this pastor is taking a new approach. He picks the story, he reinterprets it in a way that it makes sense in modern standard. Do you understand? Like when he talked about fruit, there's no fruit that Adam and Eve ate. How can you tell me that one fruit of one tree can be the source of all knowledge of good and evil? Have you ever seen a tree like that? No. So that story is somehow. Or you tell me that a snake talked to Eve. How can a snake talk, brother? Snake get vocal what do you call it? Vocal cords. Or that a donkey talked to Balaam. How can a donkey talk? Or girl, what are you saying? Have you ever seen a donkey talk? All the donkeys that you've been seeing since they gave birth to you, have you ever seen a donkey talk? So this pastor takes some of these stories and explain it in such a way that it makes sense. That this is an allegory for a certain moral lesson that is consistent with every other thing he's preaching. Even if you don't agree with the overall message he's preaching, you can't really question his interpretation. Do you understand? Like one pastor said that he drank tea with God. He came out and said, you can't drink tea with God. What are you saying? But this thing made sense to mothers. If you look at the pastor that said that he drank tea with God, if you look at his congregation, you see that it's older people. You know, it makes sense to them. They don't use internet. Younger people will go online the same day. They will see people poking holes in that story of drinking tea with God. So this pastor is explaining that it's not possible. I don't know if other pastors are attacking him, but he knows what he's doing. He's reinterpreting the religion so it makes sense to modern people. Modern people have technology, social media that makes them listen to alternative explanations of the same story. So if you don't take his approach, what's going to happen is that people will wake up and start living the religion as a whole. So if you ask me, the greatest pastor in Nigeria now when it comes to Christianity is this guy. Because he's tackling the questions that young people have. Most of these pastors, they are preying on older women, older men that don't have smartphones or know how to use. They don't have TikTok. They don't have this thing. Do you understand? Younger people, their children will always go on Facebook and see somebody tell a different explanation of that story or poke holes in it. So modern pastors preaching to younger generation, Gen Z, you have to wake up. Stop telling all those cock and bull stories about how, what do you call it? Somebody walked on water. Nobody can walk on water. Have you ever seen somebody walking on water? Many pastors tried it and drowned. I think the latest one was in 2022. Went to walk on water, they don't see them again. And it's people that don't know how to swim that always believe they can walk on water. Good swimmers already know that you can't do anything on water except swim, you know. It's people that have not been to water will always believe that somehow magically they can walk on water with faith. If you go there, you drown. The story is not about walking on water. Real human being did not walk on water in that story. It's an allegory to highlight a moral lesson. What is the key point? Many pastors forget the key point. They leave out the key point. They start explaining the walking on water. Yes, you can say it all you want with your microphone, you know, in church. So you can use your microphone and preach it all you want. You know, organics will put background music for you. But finally, when your members get back home and on their social media, they will see the same message from somebody questioning it. That's how you lose members. Even if you don't lose them on that day, by the time they hear 2 or 3 people criticizing 2 or 3 of your messages and poking holes in it, they'll wake up. You know, so if you are taking the message of Christ to anybody, you have to take it to them in a way that it makes sense to them, common sense. We're in the common sense era. That's where we are now. Social media has brought common sense. It's not like those days where there was no way you can preach rubbish to your tiny congregation in the middle of the forest village and they will not hear any alternative message. Now, the world is connected. This man is the greatest pastor in Nigeria so far. And he once mentioned his mentor. When I listened to his mentor sounded like him, but you know, an older man. But the message the man was preaching was straight and clean. We have passed that era where you would tell people that you stopped the sun. Joshua stopped this. You can't stop the sun. You're mad. You mean you halted the whole solar system just to fight a battle in your tiny little village in the Middle East? I don't know. Do you get what I'm saying? So Joshua was, is it Joshua or Gideon? I think it's Joshua. Joshua was fighting and the sun was setting. So he had the power to control the sun, the center of the solar system. He had the power to control the sun, but he doesn't have the power to command his enemies to surrender. So those few thousand soldiers of his enemies are more powerful than the sun. So this guy used mouth to control sun and control. Bro, you have to have a different, more scientifically sensible way to interpret that story. Do you get what I'm saying? There is a more scientifically sensible way. Otherwise, you will lose your members when they hear the other side of the story. So when people criticize this man, they don't understand the angle he's coming from. He's coming from the angle that modern Christians are asking too many questions, and these questions need real answers. You can no longer bully people into not giving them the answers to the question. So before you preach any message that is supernatural, you know, you have to find a scientific explanation which is testable and verifiable. Or you tell them the truth that, look, me that is preaching it, I did not witness it. This is an allegory. But this is what the real message of the story is.